He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Yet the thing we still don't know is the why, and more importantly, the who. Psychic friend Fredbear is one of the strangest, most persistent presences in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. A character who appears in every major cutscene, speaks directly to the crying child, and yet has no confirmed identity, no clear origin, and no definitive explanation. So today I'm diving into the history of PFF theories, from the earliest interpretations to the most modern lore-heavy conclusions. And at the end, I'll present a theory of my own, one that reframes the entire narrative of FNAF 4 and gives psychic friend Fredbear a role that you likely haven't considered. Hi, I'm Nick. At the time of FNAF 4's release, the most common interpretation was probably the most simple. The idea that the Fredbear plush was just the crying child's imaginary friend. This would explain the strange supernatural behavior, the way it seems to always be saying exactly what CC wants to hear, and how no one else seems to see or acknowledge it. Heck, even in the situations where CC can't see it, he can still hear it speaking to him. Later media would also support this theory, like the survival logbook including a picture of the Fredbear plush on a page about imaginary friends. Of course, many theories would go the other direction, believing the plush to be a real physical object, just with supernatural properties to explain its behaviors. Among these theories would be Agony Plush, the belief that PFF is infected by crying child's agony. We learn in Frights that an object can be infected by agony and become supernatural, like the Fetch doll, and we see in the FNAF 4 minigames that CC's life is absolutely miserable. The Fredbear plush is also frequently depicted with black eyes and white pupils. This, alongside its teleportation, can connect it to the shadow animatronics, who are frequently believed to be agony beings. This lends itself to another theory, Shadow Plush, which believes that the plush is actually directly possessed by Shadow Freddy.
I'm Shadow Freddy, I'm so awesome and black.
In the Silver Eyes trilogy, Shadow Freddy is depicted as a helpful, non-threatening entity, similar to the Fredbear plush. There's not really any evidence beyond that though, nor anything that really separates the theory from Agony Plush. Regardless, this would lead people to further investigate the idea of the plush being possessed. The first suspect people would look into is a character notably absent from FNAF 4, the Afton sister whose room lied empty. This would lead to the theory that Elizabeth possessed the Fredbear plush. Her being CC's sister would explain the protective nature. Further, some would theorize that Elizabeth's death is what CC saw that made him scared of the animatronics. The main evidence for this is simply Elizabeth's room being empty and the strange stomach mouths of Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear invoking imagery of Baby Scooper. There are also certain visual similarities between Golden Freddy and Circus Baby that can support this, though that could just as easily be explained by the two being possessed by siblings. One of the next most common explanations for the time was that the plush was possessed by Charlie. This is mainly based on Charlie's strong characterization as being protective. It also mentions the famous design similarities between Crying Child and the puppet, as potentially meaning to connect the two. This does have further interest as Nightmare Own is also introduced in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, a character who in recent games has notably influenced things as a supernatural plushie. As time progressed, what is likely the best possession theory would form. Cassidy Plush posits that the plush is possessed by the Golden Freddy spirit, Cassidy. This probably has the clearest connection in terms of visuals since it is literally a plush of Fredbear. Cassidy is also connected to CC through the very popular Golden Duo theory, the belief that both of these characters possess Golden Freddy simultaneously. Further, many believe that FNAF World is meant to represent Cassidy attempting to help CC move on. And here she is depicted as Glitch Bear, who is very similar to the Fredbear plush. We see even more of this theme of CC and Cassidy interacting in the survival logbook, which is believed to be the two communicating through a physical object. The main issue with this theory are the plush's personality, which doesn't really match the aggressive tendencies of the vengeful Cassidy. The other is the timing. As to believe this theory, you would also have to believe that Cassidy is killed before CC, and since most people think that Cassidy is the 5th MCI victim, this effectively means the whole MCI would have to happen before the FNAF 4 cutscenes, which kind of clashes with the greater narrative. During this section, I also want to give a quick honorable mention to Andrew Plush. This is a theory that the Fredbear plush is possessed by Andrew from Fazbear Frights. We mentioned some of the plush's connections to Frights earlier, and there are a lot of parallels between Cece and Jake from Fry's. Jake, whose only companion is famously Andrew. In terms of actual in-game evidence, it's really only the reach that in this cutscene, the stuff sticking out of the Fredbear suit is hair, and is meant to represent that Andrew was already killed and stuffed inside of the suit, but that's about it. Building off of these theories though, is the idea that the plush is being controlled by an outside force, but not a supernatural one. The most recent of these is AI plush, the idea that the plush is being controlled by an AI. The evidence for this is mostly from the plush's dialogue. It never states any new information, only parroting what Cece already knows and reaffirming his thoughts the way an LLM might. This was especially strengthened by Secret of the Mimic, which introduced the Mycelium Men, who were small plushes produced by MCM that featured basically the exact technology that this theory proposes. This game also introduces another notable AI character. Now, the more popular of these theories is the one that today is probably the biggest, most widely accepted psychic friend Fredbear theory. Will Plush began in Sister Location. In this game, you can find a hidden area called the Private Room. Within, you find a Fredbear plush with a device sitting on top of it, a device that most believe to be a walkie-talkie. Though in recent times, more people began to point out that it looks more similar to a camera controller, but I digress. Furthermore, if you enter the code 1983 into the keypad in this room, you'll get a map of what appears to be FNAF 4. This led people to believe that PFF wasn't literally teleporting, but rather his ever-presence is meant to represent a monitoring system that William had in place to keep tabs on Cece, and that the plush's speech was actually William talking through him via a walkie-talkie. This can be supported by PFF's strange dialogue that can be interpreted as manipulative, a trait that aligns well with William. There's also Chica the High School Years, in which Toy Chica, who is William Afton, ends each cutscene with the phrase, "Tomorrow is another day," a phrase only associated with one other character, psychic friend Fredbear. There's even evidence in the books. As we mentioned earlier, Cece is connected to Jake, and Jake himself had a favorite doll through which his father spoke to him via a walkie-talkie. This is probably the best psychic friend Fredbear theory, but it's not the last of this video. I'd like to present you with a theory of my own. You see, there's a common belief that the gameplay of FNAF 4 are nightmares that Michael Afton is experiencing. Meanwhile, the cutscenes are a true glimpse into the past, into the origins of Mike and the very event causing these dreams. But I have another idea. If the gameplay of FNAF 4 is a dream, why stop there? Hold on, this isn't about to be dream theory, just stay with me. I'm specifically talking about in FNAF 4. If the gameplay is a dream, then why can't the same apply to the cutscenes? Your first thought may be that these cutscenes seem to take place from the perspective of Cece. So how then could Mike be dreaming it? Well, let's take a look at these cutscenes. The first, as well as the one from Night 4, show Crying Child locked in 2 different rooms. And who is it that's implied to have locked him in these rooms? Night 1 and 3 end with Cece being jump scared. By who? Night 2 takes place in the pizzeria, immediately after Cece is left alone. By who? And of course, Night 5 shows the death of Crying Child at the hands of who? While these cutscenes may appear to be from the perspective of Cece, they're all equally tied to Michael. I don't think that these are true memories from the Crying Child. Rather, I believe they are recreations, facsimiles drawn from Mike's memories. His memories of how he bullied his brother, the horrible things he did to him shortly before his death. Remember what you saw. Remember what you did. Remember how miserable your brother was, and that you were the one who caused it. That's right. My theory loops back to some of the earliest that we covered. I do believe the Fredbear plush to be an imaginary entity, but not from Cece's imagination, from Mike's. This entity meant to torment Mike, to show him Cece's misery and taunt him with what Mike believes to have been his little brother's feelings towards him at the time. He left you. He knows you hate it here. He hates you. And what better way to depict this entity than to take Cece's only friends, his plushies, and pervert it into the very thing that killed him. The very thing that haunts Michael's nightmares today, Fredbear. If only there was something more. If only we had an example of Mike being plagued by nightmares of his brother's death. Oh wait, we do, because that's exactly what happens in the movies. There are two issues with this theory. The first is the night 6 cutscene. I don't have a super satisfying explanation for PFF's dialogue on this particular night. One theory is that it could be tormenting Mike by showing him that, despite his apology, CC found more comfort in the thought of these fictional characters than his own brother. Alternatively, since many already believe the plush's final line, "I'll put you back together," to have been said by William, then perhaps you could argue that all of the Fredbear plush's dialogue in this scene was said by him, and that Michael was seeing this entity from his nightmares meant to represent his agony, his remorse, and ultimately what killed his brother, in place of his father during this scene, which could be thematically fitting. The other issue is the plush's existence and sister location. This doesn't outwardly disprove my theory, it just means that the plush did exist as a physical object. This doesn't stop Mike from incorporating it into his dreams though. It just hurts my narrative a little. Regardless, that is my theory, what I'm dubbing Dream Plush. Dream Plush refrains PFF not as a guide, a ghost, or an AI, but as a manifestation of remorse. A reminder that sometimes the scariest thing in FNAF isn't the animatronics, it's the memories, the remnants of past pain. Maybe Henry was right. The best thing to do for something like this is to move on, to leave it to be forgotten.
As the agony of every tragedy should.
But what do you think of this theory, or of Psychic Friend Fredbear's identity in general? Let me know in the comment section down below. And feel free to do all the other YouTube stuff while you're down there. And remember, this is FNAF. Everything is up to interpretation, nothing is certain. So why pretend that we know anything at all? Bye.